painted for war. The hallucinogenic war paints of ancient tribes before the first war drums beat, before the first spear was thrown, and long before the first rifle cracked across a battlefield. There was the paint, thick, bright, sometimes red like blood, sometimes black like death, sometimes traced in sacred symbols that no outsider could understand. But this paint was not only used for camouflage or intimidation. In some cultures, it was something far more powerful. The paint itself could open the mind, dull pain, or push the warrior into a trance-like state. This was not decoration, it was transformation. Warrior would enter battle not just covered in war paint, but changed by it, because hidden beneath the streaks of ash, clay, and color were substances that had chemical effects. Some of them psychoactive, some hallucinogenic, some sacred. This is the untold story of ancient war paints that did more than mark the body, they altered the mind. Let us begin where the evidence is strongest, among the tribes of North America. In the traditions of many Native American nations, war paint was far more than art. It was a sacred expression of identity, spirit, and intent. Each color had meaning. Each pattern had purpose. Taint, but behind the colors and symbols were ingredients with far more than visual power. This plant is highly toxic and hallucinogenic. Colloids like scopolamine and atropine that, when absorbed through the skin, can induce confusion, delirium, even visions. While datura is dangerous in high doses, it was sometimes used in ceremonies and rites of passage. It may have also been infused into ointments, rubbed into the skin as part of preparation rituals, possibly even war paint. The Apache, for example, were known to use a plant called datura, sometimes called jimson weed. In some oral traditions, a warrior preparing for a raid might enter a trance state under the supervision of a medicine man. The purpose was to cast off fear, speak to ancestors, and become spiritually invisible to enemies. Paint infused with mind-altering plants was believed to enhance that process. These were not recreational experiences. They were deeply structured, symbolic, and dangerous. The line between madness and vision was razor thin. The Navajo, too, had complex ceremonial uses for datura, especially in shamanic practices, but it was not only hallucinogens that were used. Some tribes used stimulant plant ingredients that heightened energy, dulled fatigue, or increased aggression. Tobacco, for instance, was not the mild leaf smoked in modern pipes. Traditional American tobacco Nicotiana rustica was far more potent, containing up to 10 times the nicotine of modern strains. It was used in smoke form, chewed, or even mixed into pastes and rubbed into the skin. Warriors might have incorporated powdered tobacco into facial paint or mixed it with bear grease, ash, or clay. The effect would be a tingling, burning sensation, increased alertness, and sharpened focus. It was believed to channel spiritual power, protect the warrior, and honor ancestral spirits. While not all war paint had chemical effects, some included chili pepper oils, burnt juniper ash, or yarrow, which contains compounds that can stimulate the nervous system. Warriors often entered battle after intense drumming, chanting, and fasting. The paint, combined with these practices, helped push them into a different mental state. In some sweat lodge ceremonies, the skin was primed open by heat and sweat before ritual paints or oils were applied. The bodies of the warriors were painted in urukuma red pigment made from the annatto seed, often mixed with fat or plant resin. While annatto itself is not psychoactive, it was symbolic of blood, power, and transformation. Some Amazonian warriors combined urukum with ash from burned psychoactive plants, further amplifying the symbolic and, possibly, chemical effects. If those paints carried stimulant or psychoactive substances, the effects would be rapidly absorbed. Another example comes from the Plains Indians. Among tribes like the Lakota and Cheyenne, war paint was a sacred preparation. In many cases, the paint was not about hiding the warrior, it was about revealing the spirit within, transformation that blurred the line between man and myth. But North America was not the only region where warriors used war paint to enter altered states. Let us go deeper into the jungles of the Amazon. Among the Yanomami and Tucanoan peoples, ritual body paint and psychoactive snuffs were often used together. One powerful substance was yopoa snuff, made from the seeds of the anadenanthera tree. It contains powerful tryptamines like DMT and 5-MeO-DMT. Yopo was blown into the nostrils through bone pipes, often under the guidance of a shaman. The result was intense flashes of light, visions of spirit beings, and a complete breakdown of ego and identity. Before war raids, warriors would sometimes undergo these rituals to speak with ancestral spirits or seek guidance. In addition, certain tribes used kamboa secretion from the Philomedusa bicula tree frog. It was applied to small burns on the skin and produced a violent but short-lived purge, followed by heightened senses, alertness, and stamina. Warriors might undergo kambo rituals and then apply war paint over the fresh burned sites, combining visual transformation with physiological alteration. The result was not merely intimidation, it was transcendence. While much of the visible paint was made from clay, charcoal, and plant extracts, some included herbs known to have mild stimulant or sedative effects. Before ritual dances or confrontations, warriors painted themselves with clay and root extracts, often believed to invoke protective spirits, while the chemical properties of some of these plants remain unstudied. Their effects when applied to freshly scrubbed or abraded skin could have included heat, tingling, or even numbing sensations. One plant, daga, known elsewhere as cannabis, was smoked, but may also have been incorporated into oils or paint-like salves. While most paints were symbolic rather than psychoactive, some oral traditions suggest the use of kava root preparations as part of pre-battle ceremonies, state in which the warrior no longer felt separate from his ancestors. Kava is a psychoactive plant that induces calmness, clarity, and mild euphoria. If infused into oils or applied topically, it could numb the skin or relax muscles. Warriors used it to calm the nerves and focus the mind before battle. Combined with rhythmic war dances, chants, and deep communal bonding, the result was a powerful, altered state. In these cultures, body paint was not decoration. It was a biological and spiritual armor layer between the human and the divine. Let us shift now to Africa, where similar patterns emerge. In both regions, the plants were considered sacred, but dangerous only to be used under guidance or spiritual intent. Improper use was said to bring madness or death. Among the Zulu, war paint and body ornamentation played key roles in pre-battle rituals. But before the moko came, the paint. In West Africa, among the Dogon people of Mali, ritual body painting was deeply connected to cosmology and ancestor worship. Some warriors also painted their faces with mixtures that included datura derivatives, like those used in North America. Now we cross the ocean to the Pacific, where the Maori of New Zealand practiced one of the most iconic warrior traditions in history, the moko, or sacred facial tattoo. Maori warriors often applied natural pigments, charcoal, red, ochre, cur, and plant-based dyes to their faces and bodies before performing the haka, a fierce war dance meant to intimidate and channel ancestral power. When combined with war paint and the rhythmic energy of the haka, the result was a deep, trance-like focus. So what is happening here? Why do so many warrior cultures across the globe turn to paint, not only to mark the body, but to alter the mind? The answer lies in both biology and belief. Chemically, the skin is a semi-permeable organ. Substances applied to the skin, especially if mixed with fat, oils, or alcohol, can be absorbed into the bloodstream. This is how nicotine patches work. It is how certain medicines work. It's becoming a vessel of war, of ancestral rage, of divine duty. The paint, especially when combined with fasting, chanting, rhythmic movement, and sacred objects, creates a ritual trance. But in ancient terms, it was called possession, blessing, or becoming the god. This trance is not just mental, it is embodied. It changes posture, voice, eye contact, and aggression. And it is how tribal warriors may have absorbed alkaloids like scopolamine, nicotine, or other compounds from war paint salves. But chemistry is only part of the story. The other part is ritual psychology. The rituals were broken, the shamans silenced, and the plants outlawed. When a warrior applies paint to his face, he is not just changing his appearance, he is redefining himself. He is shedding his civilian identity. We forget that these were not costumes. They were chemical masks, psychological weapons. And when certain paints include psychoactive or stimulating herbs, the ritual effect becomes even more profound. The warrior is no longer himself. He becomes something else, something more, something feared, something unbreakable. In modern terms, we might call this a flow state, or combat trance, or even ritualized dissociation. This transformation through paint was not limited to men either. In some Native American and African tribes, female warriors or ritual dancers also painted their bodies with symbolic patterns. In certain Amazonian traditions, women prepared the psychoactive paints, and their chants helped guide the warrior's mind through the transition. The paint was never random. It was coded. It carried messages both to the spirit world and to the enemy. A red line across the eyes might mean I do not fear death. A black handprint on the chest might say, I am already dead. These symbols, combined with the altered mind state of the warrior, created a terrifying force on the battlefield. And yet, over time, much of this knowledge was lost. Colonial records dismissed war paint as primitive art or tribal costume. The psychoactive properties were either ignored or misunderstood. In modern museums, we see the artifacts, the bowls, the pigments, but we do not feel the trance. We do not see the transformation. They worked. Today, modern soldiers wear camouflage and gear instead of feathers and paint. But even now, elite units use symbols, face paint, chants, rituals to prepare for war. The psychology remains. Military researchers have begun re-examining how ritual and altered states affect combat performance. Some studies have looked at the role of pre-battle stress inoculation, how soldiers who enter a focused, altered state before combat perform better under fire. In elite special forces, breathing exercises, visualizations, and ritual routines serve the same function as the ancient war paints. They transform the mind, they narrow focus, they silence fear. When a man covered his face in blood-red paste, screamed the names of his ancestors, and walked into battle believing he was already a ghost, that was something different. And yet, nothing quite matches the raw power of the old ways. That was not technology. That was myth. That was chemistry. That was transformation. This is the story that has been left out of history books. They were complex tools, visual, chemical, psychologically, to rewrite identity, unlock inner strength, and cross the threshold between life and death. War paints were not just for show. They were worn not to hide from the enemy, but to become someone the enemy could never understand. Someone fearless. Someone sacred. Someone ready. It's painted not just for battle, but for transcendence.